Hey, it's Liz, and today I'm here with Mike Simonson, who is a former architect, a community advocate, current city council member, and current candidate for city council at large. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Liz.
You were elected in a special election in 2024 to replace Connie Boesen, who was elected mayor. So you've spent about a year and a half in city council now. How's that going?
I absolutely love it. And when I ran a year and a half ago, I made the commitment that if I won, I would step down from my office so I could devote full time. And I've done that. I'm often asked, is this what you expected? Yeah, pretty much so. But when I did run a year and a half ago, I'm so glad that they had a special election because there was conversation about appointing someone. But what that special election did was it forced the candidates to get out and talk to people.
What was it like running in 2024 and campaigning for that role for the first time?
It was more listening than talking. And I had, in 7.5 weeks, 74 gatherings. And in those 74 gatherings, I usually had the opportunity to ask questions of the audience, and that's where I went immediately. And I asked, when you think about Des Moines, what comes to your mind first? Homelessness was the number one issue. Housing affordability was 2. DART, our transportation system, 3. And Des Moines Public Schools, 4. And it didn't matter what part of town I was in. Those 4 things were the predominant items on people's minds.
Homelessness is a huge issue in Des Moines and nationwide. I mean, we're not really living in the best economic times. There was a measure by City Council last year that had a lot of headlines.
Mm-hmm.
People were very frightened to see that the Des Moines City Council was moving to penalize people for sleeping outside or outdoor camping and even fining them in some situations. You voted no to that. What was it in you that said that you cannot stand for that? And how can we do better as a city?
It's called an encampment ordinance. So it's meant to control the ability to camp or not camp on city property. We typically refer to that as a homeless ordinance because that's who it was targeted toward. I supported a portion of that measure that would allow the city to move people who are in dangerous places. Sometimes people are half off the curb on a street and it's the middle of the night, and we need the ability to help people get into a safer place. But I was totally opposed to fining people. I was opposed to citing people. These are people that have nothing. They're trying to find their next meal, and we're going to fine them, or we're going to put something on their record to make it even harder to find an apartment. So I was opposed. There were 2 of us who were opposed to it, but I could count. I can count votes, so I knew that it was going to pass. And after we voted on it, I made this comment. 2 things. 1, the fact that we even had this kind of a vote woke up the community. I received over 650 emails on that issue, and it woke up the community. People were in line to speak at the city council meetings in defense of people who don't have a home. That's one good thing that it did. And it also forced the city to think about this and to come up with a plan. One of my comments was, why are we voting on this measure when we don't have a plan to help people, to help our neighbors in need?
What is the plan?
Well, first of all, there are some excellent not-for-profit organizations that are doing very good work. Primary health care is one. They do what we call a lot of intaking. That sounds institutional or clinical, but it is identifying people who need the help and identifying resources. Homeward builds housing for those in need, and housing, several very good organizations, but we didn't have a plan. And after that vote, I received phone calls from some families in Des Moines who are very generous financially, typically in arts and culture, who said to me, if the city has a plan, we would be interested in infusing private dollars to help solve the problem. So again, that just tells you where the people's heart is. It's in helping people. So through private donations and through the community foundation, a person was hired to help write the plan. We now have the plan, and the first full-time director has been hired to help coordinate all of these organizations. So since that action was adopted, we have added beds, if you will, for women and children through Monarch Apartments. We've added and are adding more units for the Beacon. That's another great organization. The county opened a sobering center, so we have people who have those types of addictions to get the help that that they need. And another just remarkable thing that just seems so common sense. But what we've done is when people now call 911 in the city of Des Moines, there is not just one person listening in on that phone conversation to determine what should be done, but there are two. The dispatcher is one, and a mental health caseworker is the second person. And
Right.
they together make the decision at that time who should respond to this call. Should it be the police, or does it need to be a social worker? And we have had over 10,000 calls responded by social workers, and the police have had no involvement, nor were they needed.
Another issue that really ties into the homelessness issue is housing and housing affordability. Pretty much everyone my age is wondering, hey, are we going to be able to afford buying houses someday? There are people who know forever that they'll be renting, they won't be able to own. And there are some people who renting isn't even feasible because a lot of the apartments available in downtown Des Moines, for example, are luxury style apartments. I mean, as an architect, you have a really unique viewpoint of this. And I would love to just pick your brain on what some solutions would be for affordable housing in the city of Des Moines.
As an architect, I've designed thousands of housing units of all types. I'm also licensed in 22 states, so I've had the opportunities to see what other communities are doing around the country to help solve some of these issues. Now I get to solve these issues as a city council person. One of the items that we are looking at now, and I ran on this a year and a half ago, so we're finally doing it, is to look at the tax abatement schedules that the city has. Almost all homes that are built in the city of Des Moines receive some sort of tax abatement, and I don't understand why. There are $750,000 million homes that are being built and they are awarded tax abatement. Why? We need to be much more targeted on our tax abatement. In the next 2 weeks, we should be seeing a revised schedule that will focus tax abatement on the bus route corridors and toward people of income who really need the help.
You kind of touched on it, but the third issue that people were mentioning and that I hear often as a resident is DART. So DART, for anybody watching who doesn't know, is the public transit system in Des Moines.
I'm a firm believer in public transportation. Any city of our size has to have public transportation and safe bike paths. Regarding the funding, we have to keep in mind that DART is a regional transportation system. It's not just the city of Des Moines. The surrounding communities, by and large, are part of DART. DART just underwent its own study, and now that core group is studying that study to determine what are the options. Funding is a huge part of the solution. The state legislature has not been favorable to our cities, and they have not been favorable, frankly, to Main Street, Iowa. We are really hampered in our ability to raise any kind of taxes to pay for the services, the basic services that people need. But having said that, one thing that the State House did do was award the city of Des Moines the ability to have what's called a franchise fee. And only Des Moines was given that ability to increase our franchise fee. A franchise fee is a tax, and it's a tax on electric and gas, on those two services. One good thing about that type of a tax is everybody who pays an electric bill or has a gas bill contributes to that fund. So it's throughout the entire community. And we as a city did vote to approve the franchise fee maybe a month and a half ago now. What hasn't been determined is how that money will be allocated. And by law, it can be allocated to either mass transportation or property tax relief. I favor it all going to DART. I haven't seen the language, but when I asked the question of our city manager as to the average homeowner in the city of Des Moines, if, say, for example, half of this funding source is allocated toward property tax relief, how much would that be to the average homeowner? About $200 per year. Boy, with the cost of living, it's hardly a dent. Over 60% of the ridership of DART is going to and from work, and over 60% have no other means of transportation. When we talk about the homeless issue, if you take away the ability to get to your job, that's a snowball effect.
What does sustainable development mean to you in the context of a city like Des Moines? Because there's a need for development, but of course there's also the need to do it sustainably. What does that look like?
I'll answer that in the view of an architect.
I was hoping
First
you
of
would.
all, tearing buildings down is not necessarily sustainable. Even if we build buildings that have far better insulation, better windows, etc., we need to save buildings that are savable. And there's a great program, two good programs through the city of Des Moines. ION is one of them, and the second one is Invest DSM, where homes throughout the city, if you go into different pockets of the city and there might be a couple of homes that look really distressed because they are distressed, they may not need to be torn down and they can be rehabilitated, made into lovely homes, and not have to send that home to a dump. Another measure that the zoning ordinance addresses is density. It's far more sustainable to build much greater density, and again, to build it within corridors that are served by public transportation and bike routes. What I would say is mixed use development, where you have retail and office and residential all being together so that you can actually walk. One of the things that makes Des Moines so beautiful is the diversity that we have. There's a reason why I live in Des Moines and not the suburbs. And the suburbs are fine, they're quite lovely. I don't want to have to drive past 100 houses that look the same in order to get to a grocery store. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to walk to one? And I can where I live.
That equal access for everybody to be able to access a grocery store, public common space. That's what really builds a community and makes people feel like they're a part of it. Public education. On November 4th, big election day, I'm sure you're well aware, there is a bond referendum that is going to be voted on by citizens of Des Moines. That would reimagine education in the Des Moines public school system. Would you support that? And what are your thoughts on the future of public education?
Well, I actually voted yesterday.
First day.
And I was able to color in that circle. I absolutely support it. Our schools are the backbone of our neighborhoods. And in the original plan that had come out, which was twice the amount of what the referendum is now, it called for the closure of several schools, and I was opposed to that. There's a certain scale that kids need to be part of and not necessarily go to an elementary school that is just massive. So I think about some of the challenges that we have in Des Moines, and not just Des Moines, but throughout Iowa with public education today. And I'm not dissing our state, but when we take almost $8,000 per student and give it to private schools, that's just not right.
Right.
We are penalizing our public schools, and that's the first line of defense for developing young people, help them to develop, help families to grow in a community, is our public education system. That takes money. You go out to the suburbs, and I was out at the Waukee, the new high school, beautiful school. It reminded me of a junior college campus. It was that attractive. We deserve that in Des Moines. In my elementary school days, I did go to a Catholic school. It was in our neighborhood. Private schools can choose who comes to that school. They don't have to accept everybody. They don't have to take somebody with disabilities. They don't have to take the students that are challenged academically. They have choices. In the public school system, all people are welcome. And that's the way that it should be.
I went to a Catholic elementary school in Dubuque, Iowa. And
of course you did.
Of course I did. Yeah,
Dubuque.
it's Dubuque. We ended up going to public middle school and high school, but my mom worked at a public elementary school in Dubuque while I was going to a private. And I remember feeling like when I go and visit my mom at her school, there's all kinds of kids there. There's kids in wheelchairs. There's kids who are reading in Braille. There are kids that look different than me. And that bit of diversity is important for people to learn how to exist in a community and support one another. But it's also connected to life outcomes. You want to talk about reducing crime rates, having an educated public and kids who grow up to be adults with opportunities and a good head on their shoulders. That all starts with the systems that we create. I want to see our community continue to support public education like we historically have, and hopefully get back to the outcomes that we once had.
You know, when we hear the term diversity, why has that become a bad word? I don't understand that. I'm a gay person. One could say, well, I have a little bit of diversity, but isn't that what makes the world go around? And I hear some people say, well, we want our schools to teach the basic. And my response would be, shouldn't we be teaching in school about the whole world and how we're different?
Yes.
And if you as a parent are worried that the public school isn't teaching the way that you think the child should be taught, do you not engage engage with your son or your
Right.
daughter when they're at home, you're going to follow in your example.
Right.
They might even be the spokesperson to talk about fairness in their school.
I am more concerned about kids not having access to education than kids being exposed to a variety of different people. Like, that's not really a legitimate fear. And I hate that just kind of the larger political rhetoric has turned neighbor against neighbor, where they think that they need to isolate and, like, we can't be by those people, we need to stay with these people. It's not what this country or this state or this city's about. And I love the recommitment to public education that we're seeing from a lot of people in this community, including yourself and others on the city council. My last question, and this is an issue that didn't rank in the top 4 that you were hearing, but I feel like it's become a really hot topic: water quality. The city council can't do everything. It can't resolve the larger cancer crisis, water crisis, nitrate crisis, but what can the city council do to maybe ensure that residents have access to safe, clean water?
And this is talked about at the council level, perhaps not at the level that it should be, because Des Moines no longer has a sustainability office, and I would like to see that come back.
That needs to come back.
It does need to come back. We need to have measurable goals. And speaking of measurable goals, I understand that the funding in the state of Iowa for taking water samples throughout the state is being removed. So now we won't even have a benchmark throughout Iowa as to the condition of our water. But a few things that the city is looking at: we have aging infrastructure with Des Moines Waterworks. Things don't last forever. As an architect, I can tell you, buildings don't last forever. One of the things we're actually looking at doing through Des Moines Waterworks, which is a separate body from the city of Des Moines, is pulling more water out from the exit source of our wastewater treatment plant. The water that we're putting back into the rivers is far cleaner than the rivers. And a logical question asked is, well, gee, we're treating all of that water. Why aren't we pulling that into our water system and adding the necessary other steps in order to be safe, potable water? We should have rules on how much fertilizer and different chemicals that can be placed on lawns. We are doing much better in the city of Des Moines in terms of stormwater management. When you think about water quality, a lot of people probably don't think about this, but when it rains, think of the water that falls on a black asphalt roof on a street system and runs into the storm sewer and then into the stream. The water temperature of that stream increases measurably, and it can be within 20 minutes. And that affects plant life, it affects fish and whatnot in streams. We now require that all new construction have stormwater management where water is collected. It's provided the opportunity to cool down. It goes through sometimes a natural filtration system and then is discharged into the streams so it doesn't overwhelm the streams. And believe it or not, there are still some streets in Des Moines whereby the stormwater that's collected in the gutters along the street go directly into the sanitary sewer. That goes back 120 years. Most of that has been corrected in Des Moines. I think the best thing we can do is to continue to talk about it. I'm so grateful, as you are, that Polk County commissioned a study.
Right.
To say, folks, we know upstream is the problem. We're doing what we can do. Our hands are tied from what's happening upstream. My grandfather immigrated from Germany to the Fox River in Illinois, and he said it was the most beautiful stream he had ever seen. Water was blue-green, spring-fed, and the bottom of the river was solid limestone. You could see every living thing all the way to the bottom. Eels, turtles, frogs, fish. And today it's another muddy river. It needn't be that way.
No.
We just need to change our ways.
Especially since there are some really exciting talks about the ICON program. So having some sort of recreation on Des Moines rivers and waterways, it's like, we can do that. Is it going to be safe too? I think you're exactly right. Keep talking about it, keep bringing it up, and on citizens too, keep pressing our representatives to keep addressing it, because it's not something that's going to be solved overnight, and we can't lose enthusiasm on an issue this big. I appreciate you meeting with me today. It's really nice to meet you and talk through the issues at play and to get people kind of familiarized with who you are and your campaign as we head into the November 4th election. How can people support you?
Just Google Mike Simonson, Des Moines City Council, and you'll you'll get there. I thank you for doing this,
Of
and I
course.
have a request of you.
What?
May we get together again, and I'd like to hear what some of your folks online are asking about following this being posted. I'd like to hear what's on people's minds, and maybe we can answer some of those questions.
I would really love that because people, I mean, online people have a lot of thoughts and they don't always get to the people that need to hear them. So I'd be happy to meet again and we can talk through that and we can solve the world's problems one meeting at a time.
I think your audience are thoughtful people.
I'm a big fan of them.
Yeah.
I appreciate anyone who has watched. Don't forget to vote November 4th in Des Moines.
Or
early.
earlier.
Jinx.
At the election office on Euclid. They moved.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Liz.